Episode 212, Ironman 70.3 Indian Wells with Ben Miller. Welcome to the pursuit of the perfect race. I'm Coach Terry Wilson, and with each episode, I bring stories of athletes to you that share their experiences at races in order for you to learn how to have your perfect race. We will hear stories from athletes of all ages, abilities, and races of all distances. So regardless of where you fit in, there's something in it for you. Thanks for spending some time with me today. Now let the pursuit begin. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Pursuit of the Perfect Race. Today I'm talking with Ben Miller about his recent race at Ironman 70.3 Indian Wells. This was the inaugural year, I hope I said that right, for Indian Wells. The temperature on race day, I believe, was 45 and ranged to 80 degrees, with the water temperature being freezing at 57 quote-unquote degrees there. Ben had a time of 5 hours, 25 minutes, and 14 seconds. Ben came on earlier this year, which this is going to be airing in 2019, but he had time in Haines City, but now he's coming back to talk about Indian Wells. Welcome back to the show, Ben. I look forward to spending some time with you, buddy.
Thank you so much, Terry. I'm glad to be here.
Awesome. So why would you want to do this race, being that's the first year doing this race?
There are actually a couple of reasons. The first was it's not too far from my house, so it was an easy drive. I live in Phoenix, so it's only 4.5 hours just to zip over to Palm Springs. Super easy. Don't have to disassemble bikes or anything. And the other reason was I've watched in the past, and some of the inaugural races tend to not get a ton of fast racers. It's like people want to see them work the kinks out or something first. Not sure what it is, but I've watched that a lot. As it turns out, the race ended up selling out. I guess popularity between, Phoenix and California. A whole bunch of fantastic folks showed up, and it sold out ahead of time. So that didn't exactly go to plan for us. But no, that was kind of the logic, and it was also a really easy way to just sneak one more in right at the end of the season. And the season goes kind of long in Arizona, so you can train with decent weather all the way up till the very end of tri-season.
Wow. So I've been to Palm Springs before. I know. Besides 29 Palms Marine Corps Base, there's really not much there.
No, there isn't. And in fact, the only time I've been to Palm Springs is when I drove through it and I stopped one time. They have the race is in La Quinta, Indian Wells area, and maybe like 5 or 10 more minutes up the road is actual Palm Springs where they have some higher end shops. That's the only spot I've ever been to or seen. I didn't even know what to expect. The golf course is very pretty, but the rest of Indian Wells is pretty kind of like Tucson.
Just barren.
Yeah. There's just not a ton
nothing.
there.
There's dirt.
Yeah, no, not a lot.
And windmills. There's a few windmills there. So how was your training going into this race, man?
I'd say that the training was really good. Like I said when we talked last time, I'm a bigger guy, and I always try to keep myself injury-free. And in order to do that, I don't do crazy long run volumes and massive sprints and high speed stuff before the race. So I just try to keep myself injury free. But my training was pretty decent. I didn't miss anything. I had a few trips. The only oddity about the training was I usually taper the week before, and I take a pretty aggressive taper by trying to do as little as possible training wise. But 2 weeks before, I got sick. So I ended up with a really big 2-week taper. That was the only difference I had in this race versus any other type of race.
Hold on. You're saying you took a big taper of 2 weeks here, but
yeah,
there's a lot of folks out there that actually take a 2-week taper for a 70.3, and that's the normal. You're saying that's not normal for you?
No, normally I'll come in my second to last week at probably 85 to 90% of what I would normally train for at max, like 12 hours or so a week, 13, maybe even 14 hours for that last week. And then the very last week before the race, I will maybe do 1,000 meter swim, 1 hour bike, and I may not even run. I might do like 1 30-minute run.
Right. I remember that from Haines City where you literally just have like 3 workouts the week before and that's it.
Yep. I use that time to just let my body finish its rest period. And one of the other reasons that I do that is as soon as I turn the volume off in my training, I get sick. And if I shut my volume, start to lower that volume to like even 70, 60% 2 weeks out, I guarantee you I'll get sick right before that race. It's like my body gets weak or says, hey, it's time to shut down and relax. And whatever bug that one of my 5 kids might have, I will pick up for sure every time.
Wow. So I know you and Lisa both have full-time jobs and you all have 5 kids among the two of y'all. How has life been? I mean, I'm catching you right after Christmas here. How was that?
It was really, really hectic. You know, we had the Arizona half, which we raced at. And then we went to Kona. We didn't race Kona, but we went just to watch friends and support people. And then we came back and we had what seemed like the next week later was the Arizona Full, which we hosted and had a pretty good time doing and cheering that on. And then we had Thanksgiving, and my goodness, I mean, it was just one set of guests after another, one activity after another. So it was really hectic on top of the usual travel and work life, but we managed to get the training in. It wasn't too super stressful. We're pretty used to a crazy, crazy lifestyle. So just crazy busy, not crazy in a bad way.
Yeah. You know, every now and then on Christmas, I get to see somebody open a gift and they look at the gift and they don't really know what it is at first. And then the more they start looking at it and figuring out what it is, like it impacts them emotionally. And then they start getting like distraught and then they just start ugly crying. And the person that gives that gift to them is like just in awe of that moment. And you had that at Kona.
Yeah, we did. We did a little bit of a surprise. So for those of you that may or may not remember, Lisa and I both race on Chris McDonald's big sexy racing team. And Chris and Erica, his wife Erica McDonald, they had a pretty rough year last year. Business was rough. Chris had some health issues that he dealt with that were pretty significant, and came as a very big surprise. And they were trying to get their business kicked off, their apparel, clothing. It had been kicked off for a long time, but they really wanted to make a big splash. So they made a really large investment to get that moving in the right direction that they wanted to. And to facilitate all of that, it's really stressful, took a lot of time, took a lot of money. And, their team had grown to be pretty large. And while I like to think we're all super easy to manage, the team takes a lot of time and patience too. So their investment that they had for their family was really had probably been dwindled quite a bit. So we actually, a couple guys on the team had the idea to put together a little fundraiser, if you will, to maybe buy like some tickets to Legoland for them and their family to go to. So we got a collection from the team. They made donations, and Lisa and I took that down to Kona when we went. As soon as we landed, we got in the car and we drove down to their booth where Erica and Chris were and a couple other friends. And we did a little FaceTime live with the team and we presented them with that gift. They're very self-sufficient people. And it was just a really nice gesture to give time back to them so that they could go end the year with a nice little vacation. And it worked well because they were able to come to Ironman Arizona and cheer everybody on. And then they took their car and they drove down to San Diego and did that with the family. They even had a little camp down there with some other racers while they're there. And then that'll actually enable them to have a little more spare time to come. And they were at Indian Wells as well too. So it was a bit of a gift that worked really well for them. And, it just felt good to do that. And that was for people that are really self-sufficient. They don't take handouts by any stretch. They always make everything happen on their own. But it was just nice to give the gift of time back to their family. So it was a pretty emotional FaceTime video. They got a good kick out of it, and they really enjoyed it. So it felt really good to give it.
Yeah, I mean, to see this Ironman winner and his wife both just lose it. I mean, it was pretty amazing to be kind of behind the scenes to put that together.
It was very, very cool. And, I was the lucky person that got to give that gift. I wish that all the rest of the team had physically been able there to be there for that. So I felt very honored just to be able to hand that little package over to them.
Wow. Well, can I get back on course? I know Chris is your coach.
Sorry.
Hey, well, I did that on purpose because, I mean, we have to mention that. I mean, that was pretty freaking awesome. So going into this race, I know Chris is your coach, and you're still using your Cervelo P5X here, which last time you were rocking a lower PSI, and now you're rocking 105 this time. You're still using the same wheels and all that fun stuff. How is your training really going into this race as far as the volume goes with all of the hectic with the holidays, with all this? How did Chris help you with the training with the swim, bike, and run? Were you still doing the same thing? Because you still have the same job, right?
I do. Yep. I still am a director at my big corporation. The volume and everything was pretty spot on. And I need to be 100% transparent here. So Chris, mainly because my results I think are good, but I can't take full credit for that. Chris trains my wife, Lisa. And since Lisa and I do all of our training together, I indirectly am coached by Chris. And every time I have questions, he answers those for me, but I don't have a specific plan from Chris that says do X, Y, or Z. Every once in a while, he'll say, hey, when you're doing this, Lisa, make sure Ben does this or that, or don't follow Ben when you go on your bike ride, he'll blow you up. So indirectly, Chris coaches me. It's fair to be clear that way. But no, the training went well on the bike. I had my maximum bike rides, I think maybe I had 4.5 hour ride in there. But I got all the big stuff in. All the little stuff during the week was good for the bike. Run wise, nothing crazy happened. I didn't have any injuries this time. Normally I'll get some weird tweaks and twists and things that'll slow me down and some PT, but didn't really have any issues with the running. Would have liked to have had a little more volume that second to last week on the run. But no, that was fine.
So you didn't have the confidence you wanted to on the run?
I did. I don't think that it slowed me down at all. Let me put it that way.
I mean, for a big old guy like you at 235 to run 202, I mean, that's pretty impressive.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, no, it was really good. I think honestly, I tried something just a hair different this time. I avoided lifting weights at the gym, mainly because I have very little self-control. So if I walk into the gym to lift weights, I hit the biceps, and then I hit the back, and then I hit the chest, and then I do the legs. And what I didn't want to carry any extra weight into the race, muscle weight. But what I didn't do, since I didn't have the self-control, I didn't do a lot of core stuff. And even Andrew commented on me. He's like, hey man, on loop 2, he's like, you're really bent over at the waist. So I had probably missed over a month of lifting weights, maybe like 6 weeks. And I think I could have benefited had I had more discipline and just said, okay, Ben, just do the core stuff. Don't go in and hulk up on everything else. That probably would have been smarter. Yeah, no, I think that all went really well. And then the swimming component, no real problems there. I will tell you, I lost a little swimming motivation. The water quality in the pool by our house isn't fantastic. And I was kind of tired of swimming. And I'll be perfectly honest with you, about 3 weeks out, I heard that the water temperature was around 51, 53 degrees. And I know in this desert air, because the temperature is about the same here, I could look at my swimming pool and tell you that the swim was going to be canceled. So I thought to myself, you know what, this swim's going to be canceled. It probably doesn't really matter that much. If I miss 1 or 2, it's going to be A-okay. And it doesn't have a big impact on me. I usually swim about the same time anyways. So I was, in my heart of hearts, I was hoping that swim was going to be canceled.
Wow. So we're going to skip a few questions here, being that we answered those in the last episode. Why do you do triathlon in the first place, man?
My wife got me into it, and I think that the lifestyle is a very healthy lifestyle. And I think that the focus of it helps me stay focused in work. It helps me stay focused with my family. It gives me an outlet. And it keeps me very, very fit. So as long as I'm not injured, so if I keep my training under control for my body type, I stay very incredibly fit with this lifestyle, and it's just something my wife and I like to do. It forces us to travel. That's kind of what I love about it.
Right. Now, if I remember right, when you came on earlier this year, you said something that kind of stuck out to me, and that was that you really had to want it, and you. I say that because I'm doing something for the next year, but you really have to actually want what you're doing in triathlon. Why do you want to go fast in triathlon? Why do you want to do so good? I mean, you could do just as good at the 8:20, 8:30 mark. Why do you want to push yourself?
You know, there isn't enough time in the day to get everything done. So if you want to fit everything in, you have to want to make it work. And I want the lifestyle, and I want all the people that come with that lifestyle. I've met a lot of great folks. As far as wanting to do well, I always want to respect the sport. So when I say that, I mean, I don't want to go in underprepared and leave a bunch on the table of what I could have done better. The sport is hard enough as is, even when you're well trained. When you have to go out and spend tons and tons of time out there on the course, I think that it's there's always a place for folks that, you know, want to go and just finish. I'd like to do a lot better than just finish. I want to finish as good as I'm capable of at that time. So I want to do really well. And I think for me, just respecting the sport and how difficult it is, that's probably where some of my desire comes from, is to try to do as best as I possibly can.
Wow. So talk a little bit about the days that you mentally didn't want to train.
You know, honestly, I don't mind training the bike. I'll train that every day. The run, running never really feels great to me, Terry. I'm just, it always feels like I'm so slow. I don't think I have the best mechanics, and I'm just so big that I feel like a gigantic lumbering person when I run. But the only time I don't really want to train is the swim. It takes a lot of extra time to drive somewhere. The water is always cold and usually over chlorinated, and it's a gross public pool. So the swim's never my favorite thing to train for. It's also kind of lonely. You can't talk to anybody while you're doing it. And I've tried about every kind of aqua headphone in the world, and they either leak or end up dying at some point. So I get tired of replacing those. It's just kind of a lonely thing to do. But I'd say the hardest time in training is early in the mornings. It's tough to crawl out of bed at, you know, my alarm's set usually for 3:30 or 4, so that I can get up, get immediately on the bike or go for a run, and then get home in time to get myself and the kids ready to get them off to school. My youngest is 11. She'll be turning 12 soon. So I still got, even though I got a couple older ones that drive, I still got to get to work myself and take the younger ones to school. So I have to get up super early to do that, which means I go to bed really early. Of course, my kids make fun of me when I go to bed at 8 or 8:30 at night. But even then, just getting up really early in the morning is always kind of tough.
Wow. So whenever you first got into the sport, knowing that you're 6'3", 235, you might have been even more when you first got into the sport. You didn't really have a bike yet. You didn't have any of the gear yet. Did you have this imposter syndrome coming into the sport?
No, I didn't. And just so folks know what we're talking about, I kind of think imposter syndrome when, like if I got promoted into a new job at work, and I thought to myself, well, I hope they don't find out that I'm not qualified for this. That's when you say imposter, that's kind of what I think about.
Right.
So in the sport, I actually started at 300 pounds.
Wow.
And I was still 6'3", though. That didn't change. But no, I started at 300 pounds, and I started the run piece just to try to get a little bit more attractive. I wanted to lose a little bit of weight, so I thought I'd run, and I'd heard that if you run, you can pretty much eat however you like. So that sounded appealing to me. So I started the running piece, and that's when I started to lose weight. But I thought to myself, you know, I used to swim when I was really little, quite a bit. I used to race up until about junior high. And then high school came along and there were other interests than swimming. But I used to swim, I used to mountain bike, and I rode BMX bikes as a kid. I think everybody did. So I figured out I can do that. The run piece was really the only one that stood out that I didn't think I could do. But Lisa was pretty helpful. She'd take me out just a little bit longer every day. She taught me how heart rate works, and how lactic acid works, and longer and longer and longer. And we have a joke that on my birthday, which is in December, she made me go on my longest run I'd ever been on. One year, I think it was like 11 miles. And I was like, what kind of ridiculous birthday gift? Who runs 11 miles on their birthday? But no, she just got me longer and longer and longer out there. And it was really kind of the only way I was able to get into it. I never would have pushed myself to run these distances on my own. I wouldn't have that personal fortitude to do that.
Wow. That's pretty awesome, man.
Yeah.
So just to transition a little bit to go into this race, when did you actually start traveling to the race?
We left, like I said, we've been really busy up to it. So I didn't go into town as early as I normally would have. I would have normally come on a Thursday. We went in the Friday before is when we packed up that morning, dropped the kids off at school Friday morning, came home, packed the car, and got on I-10 and headed out that way.
Wow. So y'all got a hotel, Airbnb? What does that look like?
We got an Airbnb in La Quinta. The race has 2 transitions. It's like it's a point-to-point race. So since it has 2 transitions, I picked an Airbnb that was in between the 2. And I wasn't really sure what the area was like, but it was one of the nicer looking Airbnbs that was available. So I grabbed that one.
And you had somebody staying with you too, right?
We did. We had Mr. Andrew Lewis was with us, and a friend, and we had Eric Greenfield, who's also from the team. And then Chris and Erica stayed with us as well too. So we had a packed full house that was full of immense amount of laughter and fireball. It was a good time.
So what you're saying is I could have came and stayed on the couch.
You should have.
Man, no wonder Andrew was trying to get me to come out there. Man, he was like, "Man, just come on." I'm like, "Well, you gonna buy my ticket?" I don't mind coming, but I don't have money for a ticket. Man. So after y'all got there, how was the village check-in process and all that fun stuff?
The village and check-in was actually pretty cool. They do that is done at the tennis center. And I'm sure the tennis center has a name. Anything that is that nice certainly has a name, but I didn't call it anything other than the tennis center. It's a big, huge grass parking lot on one side of the street. You cross underneath the street, there's a little tunnel, and then you walk into this beautiful tennis village. And as a type A person, I love structure. Beautiful grounds. The Ironman Village was in an excellent structured building that was covered. It was an open air building that was covered, so if the sun was out, it wasn't too hot. It was gorgeous, and the vendors that they had there, one of the cycle shops, I'm not sure if it was Endurance House or maybe the place from Oceanside, I'm not sure. The bike shop that they had there, I didn't need anything, but the supply of equipment that they had was way different than the typical vendor that Ironman has for their bike supplier. They had a huge amount of bike stuff, which was kind of cool just to shop around and browse. But they had a lot of good vendors there. It was a pretty impressive vendor turnout for a half iron. Over the last few years, I've noticed that the half iron, kind of the Ironman Village vibe, has declined a little bit at the halves. This was pretty cool. It had a great vibe. A lot of vendors there. Wow.
So after you get your packet and all that fun stuff, what was in your packet that you got, and how was bike check-in?
Packet was the typical stuff, the bib and the chip. That all went very, very well. Pretty straightforward. Lots of volunteers in the tent. Most of the things in there I don't use. I don't grab their free Red Bull or anything like that. Just grab the shirt, hit the timing chip, and then we walked through the village and just shopped around a little bit. It was later in the day when we went. So to back up a little bit, when we drove in on Friday, we needed to go for a little bike ride and a little jog. So we parked the car that day and took the bikes just for a little spin that afternoon. And then we went to Ironman Village as it was getting darker. So it was pretty dark out when we got in there. It was actually light when we got there, but it was dark when we left. So we didn't stick around at the village very long that night. We wanted to get our stuff and then go grab food.
Okay. So walk me through your nutrition plan for this race before we get too much into it.
Yeah. Nutrition plan for the race. It was my usual stuff. Do you want me to start with the morning, like what I had for breakfast?
No,
and
just
then go
like
through
the bike and the run.
Oh, just the bike and the run. So for the bike, I used Infinite. I've had really good success with that, sitting easily in my stomach and digesting really well. It's a liquid base. It's powder that you put water in. I did 900 calories on the bike, which I think comes out to about 360 an hour. And then I've always had a tough time with the finding the right nutrition for the run. So the bike nutrition, I'm really happy with that product. But for the run, I used to use gel packs.
Like goo?
Yeah. Excel gels or goo or any of that stuff. I was talking to Andrew about other options, and I'd seen advertisements for that brand. They pronounce it Morton, but it's spelled Maurten. Marten is what it looks like. They're same looking little gel packs, but they're made out of gelatin, and they have the consistency of like a wet Jell-O shot, sort of. And there's no flavor.
Or
they're
a
mostly
Jell-O shot
sugar.
with too much alcohol.
Yes, exactly. Not that we know what that looks or tastes like. They're gelatin based, and they're mostly just kind of like, think sugar water. And man, oh man, I tried it on one run before the race in training, and I loved it. Didn't leave me, feeling, heavy. It digested really fast. The sugar hits your mouth, and instantly you get a little kick. So I thought, well, let's give this a try for the race. I don't have anything to lose, and Indian Wells was, it's the last race of the season, so I thought I'd give it a whirl. So this was actually an experiment in nutrition, and I took 3 of them. I took one in T2, right off the bike. I took one at mile 3, and I took one at mile 6. And other than ice and water, I didn't take anything else.
How many calories are in those?
They're only like 100 each. But the fact of the matter was, Terry, they were going in and they were working. Most of the time I take more than that, and or I take the same amount and I feel like I need more because nothing's absorbing into my system. I'm just constantly feel like I'm hypoglycemic and bonking. So I took one at mile 3, one at mile 6, and in my next race, which will be Oceanside in 2019, I will bring one more, and I'll take that at mile 9. Wow. When I got to mile 9, I was feeling pretty hungry, so I took some stuff from there, from the aid station. But that would have been one more of those. I would have done a little bit better.
Wow. Now, they're not cheap. Where do you get them?
I bought these online the first time, and I kind of bought their little pack. They are not cheap. They range, I want to say they're about $3.50 or $4 a pack, a gel pack, which is stupid expensive. And in fact, I was just, I need to buy more, because I really like them. But as I was put them in my checkout basket for $174, I thought, you know what? I'm going to ask Andrew if anybody's got this stuff on sale anywhere. So I sent him a message. He gave me a couple tips, and I haven't gone back to buy them yet. But yeah, they are crazy expensive. I don't think I'd have to necessarily use them in training all the time. Maybe just on a long run, or if I did a brick. But I would want to use them sparingly. That is for sure at the price that they are. That's more than a Vaporfly habit.
God. I see what you did there, because Andrew winged you on those too. Gosh, that guy. I love him. I'm actually going to be talking to him soon about the same race, so it's going to be fun. So as far as the day before the race, how was bike check-in, and what did you get for dinner?
Yeah, no, the day before the race was really easy. And since it's a point-to-point bike check-in, you drop your bike off at a different spot than you drop your run gear off. They really treat it like a point-to-point full iron, since it has 2 transitions. Bike drop-off went great, and then so you go down to the lake area. The only thing different about La Quinta, I've actually only done one other race that was like this. It was New Zealand. They want to protect the water from any foreign contaminants, like either mussels or whatever else contaminants you might be able to bring in, like grass or weeds or anything like that. So they make you dunk your wetsuit, anything neoprene, except for the neoprene timing chip. But if you're going to have a cap or booties or a wetsuit, you are supposed to dunk them in their little special tank for, I think it's like 10 or 15 seconds. They have a person that stands there. that you come over and they give you instructions. You roll it all up and you shove it and hold it under the water while they time it. And then you pull it out. And they give you a little clip with a tag on it that has your number, to guarantee that you have decontaminated your wetsuit. And you have to do that the day before the race. So,
and hang it up. And that's why I saw people with hanging their wetsuits up.
Yes, and you hang it up. So that was different than when I did New Zealand. New Zealand, you dunked it and then you just took it home. This one, after you dunk it, you go hang it up inside of their, they have a big changing tent area, and you hang it up in there. Now, they didn't tag if you had extra stuff like your booty or hoods. They didn't tag those. They only tagged the wetsuit itself, but you were supposed to put anything that you were taking in there with them.
Wow, that's interesting. I haven't heard of that yet.
Yeah.
So what'd you get for dinner?
For dinner that night, we went to a Italian, kind of like an Italian place. I can't remember the name, Mario's or something like that. For me, I just want real simple. I don't like to miss protein though. So real simple dinner. Just did some like spaghetti bolognese, little red meat sauce in it. Nothing fancy.
Okay. So what time did you go to bed?
I went to bed pretty early, about 8:30, 8 o'clock. The usual for me.
Yeah. So not to get too off track with this question, I want to stay on track here because I know we're living on time here. But being that you and Lisa both are in triathlon, you're both racing mini 70.3s or full Ironmans every year, does this ever cause issues with y'all? Like with timing or disconnects or anything like that?
No, not at all. Usually pretty spot on. No, never. We do that, and I'll tell you one of the reasons that's the case. So Lisa's really good at this sport. She's incredibly competitive at it. Like, she's qualified for a couple world championships. So she's a podium kind of person, quality. And I treat the races as such that this is a competitive opportunity for her, and I'm here to support her, and I'm here to try to do well myself. So if there's decisions to be made about, hey, where do you want to go eat, or what do you want to have for lunch? I'm incredibly neutral. I'll let her make any of those decisions that she wants, and I let her needs drive anything that's happening. And I'm kind of feel like I'm here to support her. I'm her bike support, make sure that that's all perfect. Nutrition support, anything special that she might need. That's my number one priority all the time. And I've never felt like, oh my gosh, this isn't about me or anything like that. I do just fine. I try to finish in the top 20% of my age group, which is fantastic for me and my body size. That's a great result. So honestly, I'm here to just kind of drive, and I like seeing her be really successאבל. So if there's anything I can do to help enable that, that's always my number one motivator, not necessarily did I get what I want. But no, that's just kind of the fun part. And I usually swim a hair faster than her. I usually bike a hair faster than her. And then inevitably the cheetah comes and catches me on the run, and I get to see her out on the run course. So that's just usually how it works.
Wow. So now to kind of get back on track here, I digress. I think I used that properly. I think so. As we get back on track, what time did you actually want to get up in the morning, and what's your race day morning ritual like in comparison to what you did at Haines City?
This one was a hair different because I can't tell you exactly what time we woke up. I don't remember when I had the alarm set, but I usually like to get up a little bit earlier. So we were probably up at 3:30 or 4. And the reason I say that is this race, since it's point to point, you have to drive your car to T2 and park, and then you get on a bus, and the bus takes you to T1 where the swim start is. So
did this create anxiety for you and Lisa?
I don't, in general, I don't like relying on anybody or anything else for any factor in my entire life. I always like to be in complete control. So whenever I have to give up to a bus, that always makes me a little more anxious than normal. But their bus system was flawless. The parking was fantastic, incredibly well conducted and oriented. We had plenty of time getting on an early bus and then getting to T2. You don't have to bring anything with you since you dropped everything off already. So honestly, all I had was a bike pump and my nutrition. Since all my bags were already at both transitions.
Now, did you bring zip ties to zip tie your pump to One of the barricades?
No, I didn't. Although that's a clever idea. I never thought of that. No, there were a few spectators there. Eric's wife was there. And she was actually racing the relay piece.
What?
So yeah.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, she was. April
Yeah.
did fantastic. But no, I just brought the pump as regular, and I knew that Erica was going to be there and Chris was going to be there. So I knew somebody would take this big old pump. But I wanted Andrew to have one, me and Eric and Lisa. So I was the Airbnb person that brought the pump.
Wow.
But no, we just handed that over. One thing we do though is, and I learned this never fails. And Andrew liked this idea. Most people that see it like it. I bring a bungee cord, and when I hang the bike up on the bike rack, I wrap a bungee cord around the seat to kind of lock the bike on its spot. And I do that because inevitably someone moves your bike, or the wind can wiggle your bike around. For mine, it's not a big deal because it's a big, like, size 58 kind of bike. For Lisa's, her bike is a lot smaller, and her wheels don't touch the ground. So if there's any breeze, it flips her bike all over the place. And we had it fall off the rack one time in a big windstorm, and it messed the derailleur up. So I just
and it's not a cheap bike either.
No. So I bungee cord the bike. So I bring two bungee cords, one for mine, one for hers. I just wrap it around the seat, and it also keeps people from moving your stuff around. Because people will see it and they're like, "Oh, I don't want to mess with that." It's surprising how many times people move things in transition, and I don't like people touching my stuff. So it's a deterrent. Sorry, I got sidetracked.
Oh, you're good.
Yeah.
So you get to transition in the morning of the race. You're putting right at 105 PSI in there. And what else are you doing in transition?
Not much. I threw my nutrition on the bike. It had been, the dew point was a little low, so I wiped my bike down. I double checked to make sure that both derailleurs were working. Got my sticker on my rear disc wheel to cover the hole on it from filling it full of air, and just made sure that it was in a low gear. I wasn't hopping on the bike into an enormous gear. Bike was all set. Nutrition was good. Went into I hit the porta potties and then ran to the big tent where the wetsuits were, because I was concerned that my wetsuit would all still, and my booties and everything would all still be in the right spot. The reason I say that is twofold. If you think people have a hard time racking their bikes where they have an actual specific number to hang their bike at, there were no numbers in the wetsuit area. They would have a number at the beginning of the rack and a number at the end of the rack. And for instance, my number at this race was 445. And when I went to go put my wetsuit up, the first rack slot was supposed to be, I think it was like 440. 190 was sitting in the beginning of my rack. So I don't know why counting is so hard. I don't know.
Math is hard.
Yeah, I think it was just confusing for folks, probably because it was a very different structure than most of them. So I had to grab a few people's stuff and put it in the right spot. I tried to be a good citizen, and I straightened some folks' things out. But I was kind of nervous coming in. I was like, am I even going to find my suit? Is it going to be in the right spot? So a little anxiety about that. And then also I'd hung my hat and booties in there. So I wanted to make sure that those hadn't fallen out or anything. So porta potty, went there, found my stuff. No problem. Had no problem finding it. Got it all, came back out. And then it was just trying to stay warm in the morning because it was pretty cool.
Right. So going into this race, you know it's going to be a cold swim. You're lining up to get into the rolling start for the swim course here. How is your mindset for this cold water, knowing that it's actually going to take place? Yeah,
my mindset was that I was still hoping it would be canceled. When we showed up, they said they said that it was 57 degrees, and there's always philosophies, you know. Did they stick it in? Do they want it to be cold? Do they want it to be warm? They wanted the race to happen. That was clear. 57. If they measured that thing at 57 degrees, someone poured their coffee in it first. Because they did it at the edge of the lake where it was really shallow. I think the lake is only about 8 feet deep at its deepest. I heard. I don't know that for a fact. But I will tell you it was significantly colder. I'll throw a little tidbit out here. Chris told us, he said, absolutely without question, you are to get in ahead of time. And even if it's way early, you are to do a test swim to get used to that water temperature. There were a few folks that their Garmin measured the temperature of the water, and they were showing more in the 55 kind of range. But I will tell you that outside of just the first few edges when you walk in, it was colder than that. I'm not a human thermometer by any stretch, but I have swam in places like Ghost Lake in Canada. It felt more like 50. It was cold. And I don't know if I could tell you the difference between a 45-degree pool and a 50-degree pool, but at the end of the day, it was ridiculously cold. But that pre-swim, went out and back a couple times. While it was absolutely terrible, it completely removed what I would say the shock factor when the race went off and we actually got into the water. So that was really, really nice. My only concern that I had was they didn't want you in the water, so they only gave you a certain window of time to go do the pre-walk in and come out for pre-swimming, and the sun had come up. So there's a 40-degree fluctuation in temperature in this day. And once the sun came up, you're sitting there wearing a hat. I had a skull cap on, I had my booties, and I had my wetsuit. And I don't know about your wetsuit, but mine's black. And as soon as that sun came up, it actually started to get warm. So there was no shivering. And I thought to myself, oh my gosh, it's going to be really shocking when I get back in the water. And it wasn't at all. So that was very, very delightful. What I did find, though, that for the swim was super easy. It's all right-hand turns, which is very nice. You're constantly sighting to the right.
But this is like a Y, though.
Yeah, it's kind of a funny shape. It's like a Y. It's kind of shaped like a V. You can look at the map course, the map layout of it. It was a very simplistic course to swim, though. The only tricky part was kind of like Ironman Arizona. There's one, you're swimming into the sun for one section of it, which made sighting pretty difficult. But it's laid out well, and you're only doing it for a small section directly into the sun. So it really wasn't bad by any stretch. My swim, and Lisa's was as well too, was really slow. The booties, I'd never swam with booties before, and they fill full of water, which was a little different. Maybe mine weren't tight enough. I don't know. I had the biggest ones with my big old feet. But I normally swim 36 to 37 very consistently, like very, very consistently. And I swam a 43 in this race. And it was really just those booties just fill full of water and they slow you down. I think Lisa said that if she was doing it again, she would have done it without the booties. I don't know. I felt comfortable in the swim. And for me, being comfortable outweighed the speed gain that I would have probably gotten. So I was happy with that. Went through transition, and then on the bike, I was probably only cold on the bike since the sun was out for maximum of 5 minutes. That's how fast it had already started warming up during the day. But no, the swim was fine. Right hand turns, funny shape, but easy to navigate. And I was glad I had tinted goggles. No wind, so there wasn't any chop or anything like that. Water was relatively clear. You could actually see your hand well in front of your face. So it wasn't like Tempe Town Lake or anything like that. So the water quality was very nice. It was, honestly, it was pretty delightful. Other than the booties slowing me down a little bit, that's my only real complaint.
Wow.
People also, in my group that I swam with, people seated themselves pretty well in the swim times. I wasn't getting plowed over at all or anything.
Going out of the swim into transition, how was T1 for you?
T1 was perfectly fine. The only thing that happened that I wasn't expecting was they said they were going to be wetsuit strippers, and there were not. I don't know if that was a last minute change or what drove that, but there was nobody there to take the wetsuit off. So in fact, there was nobody there to even help me unzip it. If there were people unzipping, it was someone else was getting that service and I wasn't. So I ran all the way up and I went in and I grabbed my bag, which was hanging in the same tent that my wetsuit was hanging in. And they had chairs in there, kind of like a full Ironman has chairs that you can sit in. I took my time in T1. You'll see my transition was actually 6 minutes. That's incredibly long. But I figured, look, I can't necessarily feel all of my appendages just right. My dexterity with my fingers was a little low from the water being so cold. So I just said, I'm going to go slow, make sure my feet are dried off. So sat down, got all my wetsuit stuff off on my own because there was nobody to help. Got on my cycling stuff and put all my things back into my bag. And then ran out towards the bike. So I did everything inside that tent, 100% ready, just like I would in a full iron, and got all of my stuff on and went straight out to the bike. It wasn't a significantly long run, wasn't a significantly huge transition area. It was very well organized, very clean. There was a little bit, once you get your bike and then get out of transition, the run up to the part where before you can mount it's a little longer than I like running in my cycling shoes, but
it was on grass.
The transition area was in a, trying to remember. I can't remember if it was grass or not.
Transition was grass, but I'm sure there was concrete.
The running area up was concrete. Yeah, the running area out of transition was concrete and asphalt. Yeah.
So whenever you actually get on the bike, do you have a strategy for the bike? I looked at the bike course, and it seems like there was like 1,000 turns on this bike course.
The bike course was very, very easy. It's incredibly flat, 600 feet of elevation change on the bike. Really, really flat. I didn't notice a ton of turns, and that could be because my race I had just done before that was the half Ironman Arizona, which I think has like 90 turns. So this was nothing like that. I didn't think it was super turny. In fact, there were lots of nice long straight sections. The road quality was, I would say, relatively decent. There were a few sections where the road had kind of buckled a little bit. It was smooth where the tire tracks would be, but if you had to go past somebody, like go from the right to the left, crossing over the middle part where the tires don't go, kind of bumpy in there, but no bottle ejection or anything like that. But definitely a little bit of heaving there in the roads in some spots. For the most part, it was relatively straight. My strategy for the bike was to go really, really easy. So I raced Ironman Arizona, the 70.3 as a relay, and I was the bike leg of it. So my bike training going into this was nothing short of exquisite. And I just wanted to go really, really easy on the bike so that I could have a good, fun run and be able to race the run, which people might look at my time and say, 2 hours and 1 or 2 hours and 2 minutes. That's okay. For me, that was actually pretty good off of the bike. But my bike, I wanted to be right around 200 watts. So I rode this race about 70 watts lower than I raced the relay half, which I ended up at 201, and my normalized power was 207. My FTP, just for reference for the listeners, is 340. So the intensity factor for this was only 0.61. So I essentially had a vacation joyride on the bike. I just focused on nutrition and not drafting anybody, just staying safe. Really easy bike. And there were a few areas that had really pretty scenery. There were a few areas that were kind of like downtown Tucson. But honestly, it was a really nice ride.
So to put that in perspective, you did a 2:31:38 at Haines City earlier this year, and you laid your bike down there.
Yes.
And you didn't lay your bike down here, and you saved that time, and you still went a little bit faster.
Yep.
But you were taking it easy.
Yeah, and you can see the fitness difference, right? I mean, that's a significant power savings over this one. But yeah, it was a really good ride. I felt really good about it. What I would love to do is I would love to do this ride as a relay, on a relay team, because on a course like this, I could just destroy a course like this. I bet I could. We were joking with Andrew. I said, what would you give me if I tried to ride a sub 2 on this bike? I didn't want to have a day like that where I had to run afterwards. So I didn't attempt that, but I would love to go try to do a speed contest on a course like this.
That's almost like Galveston. Have you seen the course for Galveston?
Yeah, I've raced that one.
Oh man, that's awesome.
Yeah, it is awesome.
So as far as the aid stations here, did they have what you wanted? Were the handoffs good? Did they have enough volunteers? Were they laid out good? What was this like?
They were all laid out well, just as you would expect at a normal half. Volunteers were fantastic. I don't pick up anything except for water on the bike. Usually just to cool myself off or get a fresh splash of water. I use on my bike for my bike nutrition. I do infinite in one bottle, like I said, 900 calories, and my goal is to have that finished with about 20 minutes left in the bike. And then my other bottle, I have one Nun tablet in it. So that's all I take on the bike. I sometimes have a salt tab and a Tylenol and an Advil, just in case I feel like I'm going to have a sore back or something if the fit wasn't right, or I've been squiggling around on the seat, not comfortable for some reason. But the only thing I do at the aid stations is I grab a bottle of water. I did that at two of the aid stations. And I mean, nothing different, nothing special out of there. So I didn't really utilize those too much. I try to avoid them just because those areas are usually so accident prone. So if it looks congested, I usually just skip it.
Right. And it's just like the special needs on the bike at a full, most of the time there's accidents there. I've worked Ironman Texas 3 times, 2 times, no accidents. And that's like the goal of the day.
Yep.
If we can get done with the day with no wrecks, it's a good day. First year I volunteered, we were working with a high school group, and they didn't know what they were really doing, and one of the cords got wrapped up in the chain, and this guy went head over the handlebars, and he was not that nice about his experience there.
Oh.
But it happens.
Yeah, I always try to mitigate risk, and I consider those high risk areas. Yes. And I'm tired of crashing, so I'm not going to crash my bike anymore. So I'm staying away from it. 1 a year for everybody. That's about the norm. There's 2 kinds of people, right? The people that have wrecked and the people that haven't wrecked yet. Yeah. I got 2 in last year. I'm not doing any more. Man. So as far as the bike goes, did you have any cramping, jet issues, or see anything that was odd? Absolutely nothing. It was completely flawless. It was like an easy training day for me, with the power that low, and not a ton of turns, not a lot of people to see out there. I was in an area that I was in between a time set of people that was really kind of quiet. So it was honestly a very relaxing ride. Wow. So did you see a lot of drafting? No, some of the people that stayed in our house said that they saw some, and complained about it a bit. In fact, one of folks said it was a pretty big issue with a group that he was seeing. But I saw absolutely none. I had no problems. Played a lot of zigzag with some of the same people. I go a little slower through the corners since I'm a little pensive from crashing a couple times. And then I'll pick it back up for the straights. But that resulted in some seesaw back and forth with some people that I essentially raced the whole course with the whole time. But no drafting problems. There was a lot of course marshals out on the course that really? I saw. I probably saw 6 or 7, which is pretty. In fact, there were probably more, at least 6 or 7 of them though. So there was a lot of officiating out there, a lot of motorcycles. Wow. They weren't on Harleys though, were they? I didn't pay that close attention. I only say that because apparently at one Ironman a few years ago, all of the race officials were on Harleys. Really? Yeah. So the Harleys, I mean, they're loud, so everybody could hear them coming, and then they would stop drafting long enough for them to get by, and then they would get back in their draft packs. It was kind of funny. Yeah, you got to watch. I guess it's the Gold Wings you got to watch out for. Yeah, the quiet ones. Those are sneaky. Man, so as you get closer to the end of the bike ride, how do you feel like the bike ride went for you? Man, I felt so great. I was really happy to see a 2:30 kind of bike time with such little power. I did take my Tylenol and Advil, just because I figured, well, if this run gets difficult for me, and it was starting to get kind of hot, so I had my salt tab as well too. I figured, this is going to be a little toastier. I might get a little sore, so I'm just going to take a preemptive strike and make sure that I've got a little anti-inflammatory in me to help with aches and pains on the run. But no, I didn't have any aches, didn't have any issues, didn't have to stretch my back out. I didn't slow down. Normally in a half iron, I might take like the last 5 miles kind of easy, sit up, stretch my back, etc. I didn't push hard enough to do that. I was so overtrained for the bike that it was just a walk in the park for me. So just took that pretty easy. And went right into T2. T2 was stunning. It's a beautiful area, beautiful grass, nice and big and open. The bikes weren't packed together, lots of space. It was beautiful, beautiful transition.
Wow. So it seems like to call an audible with like pain relief medicine or extra nutrition. How did you learn to start doing this? Because a lot of people don't know to do that or when to do that. How do you know when to do that and when to do that with the nutrition and ibuprofen or Aleve or Advil?
I found that when you want it, it's too late. So I am always more open to doing it beforehand if I think I might need it. If you feel, it's kind of like nutrition. If you feel hungry, it's too long. You've gone too long. So I always try to be a little preemptive with that sort of stuff. And it's never upset my stomach or anything like that. So I first heard about somebody I think actually it might've been Chris, said that he tapes one like an Aleve or something, or
on the back of the bib,
a Tylenol on the back of his bib. Yeah. And I thought, oh, that's kind of a clever idea, but I don't know about you, but I'm messy. So when I'm going through aid stations, I'm throwing water on and ice, trying to stay cool because I don't dissipate heat very well. And even I couldn't imagine trying to fidget with my bib, trying to untape something that might have dissolved from all the liquid I've thrown on myself. So I figured, you know what? If I need this, I'll just put it in my bento box on my bike. And if I feel like I might need it, I'll take it on the bike. That's just a lot easier. It's comfortable. It's easy to get in and out of. So I've never taped anything to the back of my bib before. So that's that's where I heard about it. And then that's how my logic is played out.
Okay. So as you get on the run course, how did the first few miles go?
Really pretty easy. Transition was fine. I came out, it's stunning. And it's at that tennis center that I talked about. Lots of people and vibe happening right there. It's a really pretty flat area. It's very open and exposed, and it was starting to get pretty warm, getting pretty hot. My Garmin actually showed that it hit 85. My wife showed that it was more like 78. I think probably had a lot more body heat coming off of me. So the first probably mile was exposed in the sun. Legs felt fine. I was actually really excited. I thought, wow, you know what? This strategy's really played off. I think it's going to work well. I took one of those Martin gel packs right in transition as I got off the bike. So that was my first bit of nutrition for that. And I had them put sunscreen since it was so hot. I had them put sunscreen on the back of my neck. My arms are mostly covered with the sleeves, and my legs. I'm from Arizona, so I'm pretty tan. But the back of my neck, I didn't want to get burned. So I had them put a little sunscreen on there, ran out, and I started heading out towards the golf course. So the golf course is where the bulk of this run takes place. It's beautiful. It does have a decent amount of elevation, though, 430 some feet. That elevation comes from you're running mostly on golf cart paths. So they're nice and paved. They're about the width of a golf cart. But there's a lot of lefts and rights and ups and downs. But when you're doing that, there's some trees. So you get a little bit of shade here and there because it's a pretty golf course. So there was a lot of topography. It's a 2-loop run course. So that section out to from where the finish line is, where transition is, it's about a mile. I'm guessing. I could be a little bit off. You run out in that nice flat area, and then you come down, and then you get on the golf course, and then you come back off the golf course, and then you run back through that area again, and then you do that loop twice. So I'd say about probably 80% of this run is on the golf course. My percentage may be a hair off, but relatively that's about right. And it was really pretty. My only complaint about that was, so I took one of my gel packs at mile 3. I took another one of those gel packs at mile 6. At mile 9, I was starting to get hungry again. And I didn't have any more gel packs with me. I had already had the 1 and T2, 3, and then 6. I would have liked to have had one more of those for mile 9. So I used some of the nutrition that they had at their aid station. I had a goo and a little slice of orange, and then a little splash of Gatorade. But if I had to do over again, I would have brought one more of those gel packs for me.
So again, you had to make a decision on nutrition. How did you know what to do for you?
Well, I started to, it wasn't that I felt low, like my blood sugar wasn't low. I didn't have cross vision. I wasn't feeling weak. So it wasn't a blood sugar type thing. It was just, I was hungry and I knew I was starting to get weak. Like I didn't have the same pep in my step and it wasn't necessarily muscular. So I knew it was nutrition based. So I just looked to see what they had. The orange gives you a nice bit of a sugar rush right in your mouth. You just kind of let that sit in there for a second. And, it's very vascular in your mouth. So the orange gives you a little quick hit. And then I figured the goo, if it does or doesn't go in, it had caffeine in it. I figured that would be a good thing for the stomach. So I was just making split decisions. I walked through that aid station so that I could make those decisions. I didn't try to run through that aid station. So I just slowed everything down, made the right critical decisions that I needed to make, and then picked it back up and went again. So that was kind of how that thought process played out. The one thing that I would have liked to have had was more ice. So the run course, it's on a golf course, and their aid stations, I don't know if it was because it was difficult to access their aid stations to keep them plenished properly. Water was no problem, but ice was not plentiful. You'd ask for ice and they say, oh, it's at the end, but there was nobody at the end with any ice, or the person was going to get ice from a maker or something.
And you finished in 5:25 with a 2:02 run time and a 2:30 bike time. So you were in the more of the leader part of the run course, because a lot of people finish above 6 hours, and you were well beyond that, ahead of that, and you were already having trouble with ice.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, it was like I said, it was starting to get pretty toasty, even though there was shade, which I was very thankful for. It was still getting hot. On loop 2, you can look at my graph and it starts to drop down. My pace starts dropping as the temperature starts coming up and my performance index starts decreasing as I can't dissipate the heat. So normally I wear a trucker hat so that I can throw ice in the hat and then I throw ice down my kit, and that dissolves down in the crotch where it's real vascular. That works incredibly well. But it's a good strategy. So that's usually my strategy for keeping cool, but I didn't have as much ice as I wanted, would have liked to have had. So I was starting to struggle with heat on loop 2 of the run.
Wow. So did you see anything funny on the run course?
Anything funny? I know we did, because we talked about this afterward. Oh gosh. It's not coming back to my mind. There's always something entertaining. There's always someone doing something or wearing something crazy. Nothing's coming back to my memory at this moment on what it was, but, no, it's, everything was it was a pretty straightforward event. Good. It was decent support. It was kind of desolate out on the run course because the only spectators that are out there for that 80% of the run are either the other racers or the people
playing golf.
Yeah. There was nobody out there cheering. That was on the last part of the course. So
did that make it harder for you mentally?
It kind of did.
Really?
I'm used to a little more action, but I will say from a positive perspective, when you see all those people and they're cheering, you tend to go faster than you should, or faster than you can. And then you pay the price for that afterward. So since it was out in no man's land,
it
I didn't have anybody to show off.
You're able to get into your groove and know to stay there.
Yep. Still I kept a groove,
man. So just to kind of fast forward a little bit here, you're in miles 11, 12, and 13. How are these miles going and going towards the finish line?
They were going really well. I had enough in me to mentally be able to dig really deep. The nutrition that I took on that last aid station at 9 worked fine. I will tell you that 11, 12, and 13 were the hardest, which might sound incredibly obvious, but it was really hot. And you're trying to do that last bit in that golf course with nobody around. And I was starting to bend at the waist a little bit, so my form was starting to go downhill a little bit. but I knew the end was in sight, and I'd seen a couple folks from the team, and I knew my time was pretty decent. So I was pretty happy with the result. And I knew I was going to end in a decent place. So that was very motivational. And I wasn't on the edge of bonking or, falling out of just, having to like stop and walk or catch breath. Had plenty of endurance. So I was feeling pretty positive at the end of this race. Let me put it that way. I felt good because I was able to race the end of the run instead of crawling.
Right. So mentally, it doesn't sound like this was very hard until like just the very end, which sounds like it was just a nutrition issue, right?
Yep. Yeah. And there's no, and it wasn't too much of a problem like that. Like I said, that I didn't have the nutrition I would have liked to have had, but it worked fine. And it just wasn't that heat. Probably could have gone a little bit faster. But you don't get a big cheering section at the very end. It's kind of crickets once you get back on the tennis court and you start running back to the area. And, you can't hear Mike Riley or anybody announcing stuff because it's kind of far away and blocked by the building. So it's kind of it's kind of quiet. There was one funny section I was running. I was probably only about a mile, maybe mile and a half out from the very end. And it's a U-turn. Instead of turning right to go into the finish chute, you stay left to go make the second loop. And I was running in, and I was bent at the waist, and I wasn't looking so great. And I was running next to a guy, and he looked at me and he goes, "Man, we went too hard on the bike, didn't we?" And I just kind of like, yeah. I didn't really say much of anything. And when we got right to the very end, he had to turn left for a second loop, and I went to the finish chute, and he looked at me, and he had a couple funny comments to say.
What did he say?
He's like, he said, "Oh, you got to be kidding me, man." He's like, "I thought you were going on the next loop with me." So I thought, no, maybe you went too hard on the bike. It wasn't me.
That is awesome. So
that kind of made me feel good.
So the finish line here, how was that?
The finish line is it's pretty quiet. Once you make that right-hand turn to come in, you can see the finish line and it's really close. So the finish chute is actually relatively short. No, it was a lot of energy. It was nice. Finished up and then just waited for Lisa at the end.
Wow. So after you finished, what'd you do next?
I caught Andrew and then we got some food. We just kind of laid down in the shade for a little bit to cool off. And then we went back to the chute and just waited for some folks to come through. Cheered people on, but then we just went and got cleaned up. It had felt like it had been a long day, so we packed it in. Yeah.
How was your recovery process after the race?
Really, honestly, pretty easy. Last few races that I've done involved Tegaderm and Band-Aids, so this recovery was easy since I didn't wreck.
Gosh, well, that's good. So looking back on it, to kind of transition a little bit, what's something that you learned about this race experience that you would like to pass on to someone who's looking at doing this race next year?
If I was going to pass anything on this race, I would say I think the race is going to be pushed out a week or two. I think they said that they announced it was going to be, instead of December 9th, it was going to be like December 21st or something like that.
Really?
Yeah, that was the rumor that I heard. And if that's really the case, that water's going to be even colder. You start in the desert, you get big fluctuations in temperature, and the longer you go, the more that's going to vary. So if they were going to pull this race in a week, I would be more excited. Just because there's less variability in the water, would probably be a little bit warmer. 1 week of cold, 30, 40 degree at night kind of weather in the desert makes a big difference on a body of water that's that small. So if they're going to pull it in, I'd be more excited to do it again. If they're going to push it out, which it looks like they did or are going to do, that water is going to be even colder. So your probability of it the swim being canceled is probably a little higher than what even we were faced with. You can always have, different kind of summers, but in general, I've lived in the desert for 12 years, 11 years. It works the same every year. So I think that the probability of the swim being canceled next year may be a little bit higher than what we were faced with this year, or shortened rather. But you're going to have to make a decision. Those booties, you may want to try practice swimming in booties, just to see how that feels for you and what impact it has on you so that you're prepared for that. Anybody that is doing it, if the swim is going to happen, make sure you do that pre-swim. That is imperative. Don't worry about getting cold afterward. Anybody that doesn't do a pre-swim is in for an unbelievable shock and awe when they get in the first time. That 50 degrees is really, really cold. It literally takes your breath away. It's not a metaphor. And that is not something you want to just jump into and go because you're afraid of being cold. Also know that if it's not going to be cloudy, it's going to be a hot day. So make sure that you're prepared for some serious sweat in the afternoon. Those would be my bits of advice. Don't undersalt, don't underwater. And in the desert, not a lot of humidity. So just like Ironman Arizona, you may not feel like you're sweating a lot. You don't need to drink a lot. That's just because you're doing the same thing you've always been doing. It's just evaporating, so it doesn't feel like it. So it's an easy course to get underhydrated on if it's going to be a hot sunny day.
Wow. So I know if we take a look at it, there were a few news articles going around where the locals didn't really like the race. Did you see that?
I didn't hear anything about that. If there was, it missed my radar.
Yeah, I saw a news article where it was posted in the Ironman Indian Wells group where some of the locals didn't like it. The businesses were kind of didn't know or whatever, but they said that they pass out flyers and whatnot. Didn't know if you experienced any of the locals not really welcoming the race.
I don't know. I didn't see or hear anything about that. I would say that Indian Wells isn't exactly a bustling town. So anytime you're going to bring in 3,000 racers, since it was sold out, plus probably another 2,000 spectators that aren't locals, they probably had quite a bit of business activity the day before. And likely, since it was on a Sunday, they probably got some more action on Monday. Probably the traffic disruption was the most upsetting to them. But anything, people don't like change in general. So anytime something's different, people freak out. If you have the opportunity to park in the same parking spot every day, most people will. So maybe they weren't quite used to. I'm not sure what drove it. I didn't read any articles. But hopefully it wasn't too crazy disruptive for them. Maybe just more of an inconvenience.
Yeah. So how could Ironman have made your race experience better? It sounds like they just needed more ice on the run.
Ice and wetsuit stripper would have been a really nice thing. They knew if this race was going to happen, there was nobody that was going to do it in a Speedo. So I don't know what happened with the strippers, but that just seemed like odd planning. Other than that, it was flawless.
Wow. So we covered quite a bit about your race. Do you have anything else you want to add?
No, I don't. I think we covered the bulk of it. I think Andrew, if you interview him for this, will give you the lowdown details of the technical stuff. But
I'll need 5 hours for that, though.
It was a fantastic race. Good time with friends. Great location. Check the date before you sign up for it. That's my only advice.
Wow. So just to transition a little bit to wrap up here, what's next for you? You said Oceanside?
Yeah, I got a couple little half marathon sort of things, but Oceanside 70.3 in April.
What's after that?
Santa Rosa full.
And after that?
Arizona half relay again. I want to see if I can set a new record.
Nice. Are you wanting to legacy your way to Kona?
If I get there, maybe. It'd probably just be easier for me to buy a slot and quit racing fulls. I mean, I should probably just buy one of those eBay slots and save myself a lot of headaches.
There's no way I could ever afford that. Jeez.
I have to talk to my tax guy and see if it's worth buying my way there.
See if you can write that off. Gosh. Yeah. So what races are on your bucket list, man?
I want to do Challenge Roth.
Yeah.
I'd really like to go experience that. I hear that that's pretty amazing. That's probably my big bucket list. Other than that, I wouldn't mind riding my bike around Europe, but not necessarily for an Ironman, just to go tour Europe on a bike.
Wow. So when are you going to do that?
I have sabbatical coming up, so that'll be 8 to 10 weeks of kind of vacation. I may consider doing that in 2020.
Wow.
And end of 2019 or 2020. We'll see how that plays out.
That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
So being that I already know what your definition of a perfect race is on here. I can't talk sometimes, I swear. So I'll just ask you something different to wrap up the episode, and that's, in order of importance for you, what is most important? Mental grit, nutrition, or fitness?
Most important. Well, it certainly takes all three of those. I think that I'm mentally always in the right state. So for me, that's not crazy. Nutrition. If I don't have the right nutrition, I just can't do anything. My body just shuts down. So it's got to be nutrition for me. That has been my toughest trick, to get right and to get so that I can keep going. The training, I always put the right amount in. So the endurance piece is usually not a problem. The thing that always shuts me down is food. That is my most pivotal piece to iron out.
Wow. Well, Ben, it's been awesome talking to you, and I look forward to following you, man. Send me some pictures, and I'll be sure and put them up, okay?
I absolutely will. Thanks, Terry. Have a great day.
Hey, you too, man.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in today. I hope you were able to learn something from today's episode. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to leave a review on iTunes or share it with a friend. Be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. If you'd like to see pictures from this athlete's race, learn more about who I am, what I'm doing, or be on the show yourself to share your story, check out my website at CoachTerryWilson.com. Until next time, continue the pursuit.